Over the past 10 years, New York State English Language Learner, or ELL, enrollment has increased by 20%. Throughout New York State, ELLs make up approximately 9% of the total school population. Here in Capitol Hills, we have a total of 158 ELLs, but the population really is fluid because English language learners, this population of students, they arrive and they exit at different points in the school year. We have 19 different home languages that represent our ELLs, and what I've done is I've given you 5 most commonly spoken home languages here, from Spanish all the way down to Urdu. Our district-wide data projected for next year, essentially we looked at the data this year, we rolled over the grade levels, and it looks like for Otsego at the elementary level, this will be the largest enrollment, and for our secondary building, West Hollow, is projected to have the largest English language learner enrollment. Looking at our current regulations and comparing to what the new regulations will be come September, starting with the name of the program. The ESL program is kind of an alphabet soup because there's a lot of acronyms. One of them being ESL, English as a second language, but starting September, that will change to English as a new language. Because for many of our students, many students statewide, this isn't their second language, it's their third or their fourth language. The initial screening process from the home language questionnaire that parents and guardians complete when they register their children to the district, all the way down to screening the children and determining their program placement, if they are to be placed in the program, all of that stays the same. There's no change here for us at Capitol Hills. It's always been completed by certified staff, ESL team. The only change is that when the parents and guardians are notified of their child's placement in the program, that will be done in a language in which they indicate is their preferred language to communicate. So that will be kept on file. Bilingual education program placement. This actually does not apply to us for next year, so that's a good thing. We don't qualify for it. But the change between current regulations and the new regulation set, currently, requirement is that each school district with 20 or more ELL students per individual building of the same grade level who speak the same home language are entitled to a bilingual education program. From September, that changes to 20 or more students in the same grade level who speak the same home language district-wide. But again, we've looked at that data, we rolled that over, and that does not apply to us. Current regulations require ESL instruction through a standalone model. At the elementary level, that means that the children are pulled out during their ELA block by their ESL teacher, and they're provided ESL instruction, whether it's once a day or twice a day, depending on their proficiency level in a small group setting. At the secondary level, their ESL instruction is embedded within their period-by-period schedule. Come September, the standalone portion of ESL, or ENL, will remain the same, in addition to an integrated ENL and ELA course. Therefore, an ESL teacher and an ELA teacher will co-teach using ESL methodologies in an ELA classroom. Currently, proficiency levels are broken down, 4 proficiency levels, as you see: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and proficient. After the children are tested and their proficiency level is determined, each May they take the NYSA slot. The NYSA slot is the New York State English as a Second Language Achievement Test to determine their growth in English language proficiency and where they will fall. If you look at the beginner level, children in grades K through 8, they receive 2 units, or essentially a unit means a class, 2 classes per week. 9 through 12, they receive 3 units or 3 classes each day, intermediate, advanced, proficient. Looking at this chart here, moving forward for next year, the state has added a 5th proficiency level. And the terminology has changed a little bit. Beginner entering, low intermediate emerging, intermediate transitioning, advanced expanding, and proficient expanding. But the amount of units that the students will be receiving actually is the same. So if you look at, for example, beginner entering, if you're in the 6th grade, you receive 2 units per day. It's the same as it is now. So time-wise will be the same. What changes is the ESL, in addition to the ESL with the ELA coach 1. Here's the breakdown for children in grades 9 through 12. Again, same amount of
time?
The state has decided that the exit criteria should change. The nicest slot is more aligned to a Common Core, so there will be additional pathways for exiting program other than passing, scoring proficient on the nicest slot. But if you look at option 2, scoring advanced or expanding on the nicest slot, as well as a 3 or 4 on the grade 3 to 8 ELA, or 65 or better on the English reading exam. Coming the 2016-17 school year, the state is looking at a possible pathway for students with disabilities, maybe a portfolio presentation. Currently in our ESL department, we have 7 full-time teachers. All but Signal Hill have shared teachers in their buildings. We have 1 full-time teacher between Candlewood and West Hollow, and 1 full-time teacher between High School East and High School West. Current regulations do not address grade span per scheduled class. With the new regulations, no more than 2 contiguous grade spans per class are allowed. So with the standalone ENL elementary level, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At the middle schools, 6, 7, 8. In high schools, we've broken down ESL classes 9, 10, 11, 12, in addition to the integrated ELA, ENL courses. Our projections for next year, again, as we rolled over the data from this year to look forward, you can see from this year to next year, the growth against the buildings. It's contingent upon not only the number of English language learners, but also their proficiency levels and what they will be entitled to receive. In ESL classes, in addition to perhaps not an ESL class if they're at the advanced level, but an integrated ELA, ENL class. Current preparation, again, I've said it many times, we've rolled over the data and we've looked at the data in anticipation for next year. Dr. Harrigan has advertised anticipated vacancies. We are in the process of reviewing resumes, screening interviews, and we've done seen demo lessons district-wide. All of that being said, our projection of hires for next year in this department will be an increase of 4 FTE.
Thank you for doing that. So we're looking at, right now we have, I believe we have a range of between 4 and 6 full-time equivalent teachers in this budget, the number that I had given you earlier on one of the earlier slides. Because we're still finishing up with the scheduling exercise, it's an ongoing exercise, so we did leave ourselves a little bit of room to enable that exercise to complete. So that's something about meeting mandates. That's probably the biggest mandate that we are working through this year that has a budgetary impact. On operational efficiencies, 2 programs, 2 systems that we are looking to expand on. One is an automated substitute polling service, which simply really gets us to the 21st century. When we have substitute teachers, for example, in a classroom, they get there because of a process. Right now they're calling an individual, and then that individual is calling other people to get a substitute in the classroom. This actually creates an automated process. There's a system that other school districts, many other school districts use that we're going to be signing on for, which will help us automate the process and get really ahead of the curve and get some of those substitutes that we really prefer, we can get to them quicker versus the system we use currently. And then the other piece is really an enhancement to an existing software we have. We have Finance Manager, which is our accounting and human resources system. This will help us expand that system with a new module, which is going to automate our time and attendance record-keeping process. So lots of paper that's being flowed through our departments for approval that then takes that process and automates it and helps eliminate any potential clerical issues in terms of data input. We're really doing it very manually right now. So those are 2 program efficiencies on the operational side that we're excited to be able to include into next year's budget. Equipment, we always speak about equipment separately. Those are items that are different and unique from year to year. We are looking at a total equipment budget of approximately $4 million. One of the pieces we're very excited about is to have that reinvestment in instructional technology. Again, a number of years ago, you may remember us having to tear down on our refresh cycles, so we have computers that are used in classrooms, computer carts, and we have computer labs, and we try and recycle and refresh those computers, just like we do with our buses and just like we do with our maintenance vehicles. And if you have to keep that up, or else you're going to end up having a gap in a particular year to refresh many more than you normally would have to. So we're looking at reinvesting in instructional technology, which would continue the refresh cycle according to the standard schedule, as well as put additional computers in the hands of teachers and students. So we're very, very excited about that. Right now, as it's been explained to me in the classroom, teachers really are unable to effectively plan for instruction as part of the computer integration as part of their instruction because of the availability of the computers. So we're going to fix that problem. So very exciting. At the planetarium, we've spoken about this in the past. It's one of the items that is a very unique feature of the school district. This is a program that students K through 12 get involved in, and they visit through the planetarium through their career here. Our planetarium is in dire need of a replacement piece of equipment, and we're looking at upgrading that digital projection system. Right now we have a maintenance contract with a person who comes in, I believe from Ohio, the only person who is still alive who's able to repair the system we have, and that's not an exaggeration. So we need to make sure that we have some longevity to our planetarium, and this will enable us to do that. So we're very excited to be able to put that in the budget. We're also on the backside, Mr. O'Farrell and I are working with some of our legislators to see if there's any grant money for this as well. So we've actually submitted a grant application to help fund part of this. So we're waiting to hear back from the Dormitory Authority of New York. There may be some funding for this kind of a very unique project. In addition, we are looking at equipment, updating our aging district-wide telephone system. It's about 15 years old, which is, as telephone systems go, the end of its useful life. And we're at the point of patching and repairing, so we're looking to simply update that system district-wide. In facilities, we do much of our work in-house. We don't contract out for a whole lot. So for our grounds crew, we're looking at a multifunction grounds tractor to maintain our fields, and also to replace our mail van, which that van would then go and become a spare in an emergency for our maintenance staff. We have a mail person, not a U.S. Postal Service person, but a person who actually serves as our mail person in-house and collects all the mail from the buildings and does distributions for us and works at the post office on a daily basis. In security, there are two pieces in security. I'll go through the second piece first. The second piece is about enhancing our camera systems, upgrades, additions. Really, we've been doing an assessment of our security system. Every one of our buildings has security cameras throughout, but we're looking at some of the hot spots that we want to cover, maybe the back of the building that's a little bit dark. Just do some enhancements as we should for our very valuable assets. So we're looking at that as a slight add to the budget. And then in the classification of security, residency, and truancy, in my office we have staff members who are checking on residency. We make sure that the folks who come here are the ones who are allowed to come here. And we do some home visits for that purpose to make sure that we can verify it's part of our investigations. And we also have a truancy program where we reach out proactively to students who are not coming to school. And we reach out to them with our social workers and our security office. So we're doing that right now in someone's personal vehicle. That's really not entirely appropriate. So we need to we're looking at having a sedan, just a regular vehicle, branded half-hollow bills, so that we can have that work done appropriately. And then the last piece is transportation. As we've tried to do with technology, and we're investing in that again this upcoming year, we've tried to keep our fleet current. Again, transportation is one of the cornerstones of getting students to school and back home safely. So we're looking at reused buses, which we've been able to do the past couple of years, and we actually obsolete the old buses. We have an average life cycle of about 11 years for our buses, and then we realize that those buses are simply not worth maintaining for the number of miles we put on them. I'm very excited to introduce our new buses. No more snow days. We are done with snow days. So, that's not what we're doing, but if they sell that, we'll see if it's on state contract and we'll get it. Next piece. Okay, capital projects. This is an area of our budget that we are very fortunate that this community supports supports the investment in its buildings. We know that getting students to school safely every day is important, equally as important as the instruction that's going on in the building, and then making sure that the buildings that we're instructing our students in are the way that we want them to be. So we have every year capital projects that are funded through our budget. Districts typically have to go out for large capital referendums, bond referendums, because they don't have this funding in their budget each year. We're looking at, for this upcoming year, when we've gone through with the board facility subcommittee, we've had some meetings to go through our 5-year capital project plan, which is a binder about this big of all prioritized projects, building by building. And 2 of the projects that popped are listed as numbers 1 and 2 here. The high school west tennis courts are in dire need of repair. In fact, they need to be gutted and redone. They're in that bad shape. When we do an outside project at a building, we always try to connect it to an indoor project because that's how we're able to maximize state aid, because then on all of these projects we're able to get about 30% back in aid over the course of the life of the project. So the inside project to the building that also is on the top of the list at High School West were the auditorium partition doors. You've been at High School West. In the back there are 2 doors that close up. They're actually used for instruction at the building. And what happens is, because those doors are not operable, we have to adjust the way in which we instruct, or we have to schedule differently. So we're looking to actually use that space the way it was intended and replace those doors. So those would be 2 of the capital projects for next year that are being proposed. And then we're hoping to have a facilities subcommittee meeting with the board to go through the 3rd project. We're looking at a total of $1.4 million in this code. That 3rd project, we have a number of items we have endless items that can be added, but right now we're looking at either a roof replacement or some drainage issues that we have at some of the buildings. So those conversations will be held with a subcommittee of the board, which are also public meetings, but that will be held separately because the process is exhausting because of the amount of buildings we have, and we've gone through the work as we're required to do to have a 5-year capital project plan, and we go through that and try and prioritize among the priorities. So that's what we're looking at in terms of our transfer to capital line. Some new initiatives very quickly. Smart Schools Bond Act is money that you've probably heard is out there, and why isn't the school district getting its money? The reality is there's no money out there yet. We're looking at getting a portion of the $2 billion of state borrowing that's going to be happening, which is going to address some needs that the governor has identified. I apologize, I can't read that, but some needs the governor has identified in terms of creating better learning opportunities for students. Some of the pieces, which we'll post this so you'll be able to see it online, but some of the pieces that are still yet to be determined are the timeline. How is it that I get the money? Who do I submit the form to? When is the application going to be out there? Where is the guidance I need to know what actually I can include in the plan? Who needs to be involved in the plan development? How do I get paid? Because the biggest piece for me, it's all about let's get the instructional technology out there, let's enhance our security. But for me, if it's a reimbursement, I have to treat that very differently than if it's just a grant, that you give me my allocation and then we can spend it the way in which it's approved to spend. We know that there is a committee. We know that the Division of Budget at New York State has created a committee that they will be approving the plans. Beyond that, we don't know what that's going to include. What we do know is we have $2.7 million approximately allocated for us. That's great news. And we do know that those are the 4 general categories that we must spend it in. But that's all we know. There's no money sitting there waiting for me that someone's waiting to write me a check. There's nothing out there that's definitive enough. We are going to need to submit a plan, and we're going to need to have that approved, and then we're going to have to figure out how we access that money, reimbursement, or if they're going to front it for us, and then plan accordingly for either option. And then the other new initiative, which is important to mention, is this multi-year tax freeze credit. Everyone should have gotten, most people should have gotten a tax freeze check, which represents what is noted there in those 2 sub-bullets, the actual increase in your homeowner's bill for school taxes or some factor multiplied by the inflation factor. So that was different person by person, homeowner by homeowner. That was a component of this multi-year tax freeze credit that the governor put forth that we were adhering to. Year 1 was the year that we just finished, that you should have gotten your tax check for, and that was because we as a school district did not pierce the cap. On the first slide we talked about tax levy and piercing the cap. We didn't pierce the cap, so it made you eligible for that. if you met some other criteria like being eligible for STAR. Year 2, which is this upcoming year, there are different components. The new component added to this tax freeze credit is related to not piercing the cap, which we know we're going to not do, so that's fine. But it's also related to us being able to prove to the state, again, another committee that needs to review a plan, that we are compliant with saving at least 1% of our tax levy in each of the following 3 years. So that means for us, 1% of our levy is almost $2 million. So we have to figure out a way to save, have proven savings of at least $2 million in each of the next 3 years, which would be an incredibly daunting task because we've already done that work. We've already rerouted buses and created efficiencies there. We're already looking at purchasing and created efficiencies there. Where am I finding $2 million more? Thank goodness for this community, thank goodness for this board. We've made the hard decisions. Last year we closed 2 buildings. That meets our obligation. So we had saved $3 million in closing the two buildings, and we know that we're able to use that as our plan that we're going to be submitting to the state. We have to submit the plan June 1st. We don't know what form, we don't know where, we don't know how, but we know it has to be submitted June 1st. It will be an online application. It has to be approved. We have to show the savings for each of the next 3 years, which we know we can because the buildings are closed. We know we have the savings, and we're able to go back to that prior initiative, which was closing the buildings from last year, so long as it was after 2012, which it was. So we're very thankful that has helped us budgetarily, but now it's also going to help us meet this other obligation that came down from the state. Lots of districts are losing lots of sleep to figure out how to meet that obligation. That's a big number. Next presentation is March 23rd. We'll talk a little bit more about staffing. Hopefully we'll talk about state aid. We'll talk about some benefit codes. We are going to have the board adopt the budget on April 20th, with or without a state-approved budget. The board has to adopt our budget here. And then we have our PTA presentations that Mrs. Scally and I go through. Official budget hearing is May 11th, and then the budget vote and board trustee election is May 19th. So that's where we are in the process. Thank you.